The Obi-Wan Kenobi show came out around this time last year, and that of course led to a lot of talk about who he is as a character. I've heard people talk about how Obi-Wan is basically the perfect Jedi despite his failures, and honestly I'm inclined to agree with them when I hear things like this.
There's one crucial underlying element of Obi-Wan Kenobi that was present from the beginning. He represented the Jedi as the Jedi envisioned themselves to be.
The most important part of that quote is the end of it. He represented the Jedi as the Jedi envisioned themselves to be. That made me think, why is that? What exactly made Obi-Wan a better Jedi than most? This line of thinking took me to the Jedi Code. There is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force. There's a longer version, but it's not really the main code, so let's focus on these 5 tenets and how Obi-Wan applied them the best. I'll be talking about the Legends continuity mainly because there's a lot more information to go off of, and I think my point is shown a lot better there. There is no emotion, there is peace. By not letting emotions dictate the path, a Jedi becomes a being of peace. Emotions lead to the dark side. Obi-Wan experienced emotion. There was no way not to, but Obi-Wan learned how to deal with those emotions in a good and healthy way. He was a hothead in the beginning of his life, but teaching Anakin taught him how to relax and control himself. When the love of his life, Siritachi, ended up dying, he teetered on the edge of the dark side, ready to kill her murderer, but Obi-Wan chose to let him live. The Jedi were ultimately defeated by their pride and the fact that they didn't believe a Sith could exist without them knowing about it. So many Jedi fell. Dubba Balaba, Anakin, Sora Bulk, Aura Singh, and even Qui-Gon for a time because when they went through extreme emotional turmoil, they just didn't know how to deal with it. Usually they were told to bury these feelings down, and when they came across a situation that they couldn't do that in, people suffered. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. No one is ignorant. A path a Jedi follows is a path that brings forth knowledge and acceptance of reality. For the Jedi, the dark side is a path of those unwilling to learn and accept reality. Obi-Wan never acted like he knew everything and always kept evolving. When Darth Maul beat Qui-Gon, it was partially due to Qui-Gon using the lightsaber form Ataru. So Obi-Wan, who also used Ataru, changed his style to Sarisu, a more defensive form. As the Clone Wars went on, he began to use Nine-Man to better weave his use of the Force into his lightsaber attacks. The Jedi were ignorant of the changes in the galaxy and refused to change with it. Their main enemies, being the Sith, were gone in their eyes, so there was nobody pushing them to get better. As horrible as all the wars in the Old Republic were, they forced the Jedi to continue improving. Look at the space race. So much innovation happened because of the competition between the USSR and America. First an animal in space, then a man in space, and then eventually a man walked on the moon. These innovations happened mostly because of the race. Competition forced them to improve, whereas with the Jedi there was no competition for 1,000 years. They grew stagnant and dogmatic. This stagnation led to some Jedi, not all of them, not being able to relate to the people of the galaxy, which I'll get more in depth on later. The Jedi were often ignorant when it came to the clones, treating them like machines or just bodies to throw at a problem. And when they realized the Sith were responsible for their creation, they kinda just shrugged their shoulders. When they finally did put forth effort into investigating, it was way too late. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no passion as it is a form of attachment which leads to the dark side. There is only serenity and calm. Obi-Wan's compassion was one of his greatest strengths, and it helped him genuinely relate to the beings he came across in his travels across the galaxy. He even left the Jedi Order for a short time to help restore peace on the planet Melinda Dan. While this didn't affect all Jedi, some would become so detached from their emotions that they seemed cold when interacting with people outside the Order. And some Jedi were completely unable to relate to their fellow beings as well as they should be. To give an example, in Legacy of the Jedi, Dooku and Qui-Gon are on a mission and hear a distress call from what sounds like a little girl. Dooku is so distant that he just assumes it's a trap and acts like Qui-Gon is an idiot for wanting to save her. The fact that Dooku is right here doesn't make it any better, because if he was wrong about it being a trap, he would have just let a child die. Keep in mind that Qui-Gon is about 16 here, and Dooku doesn't fall for another 44 years, so don't think this was a Count Dooku who was on the brink of turning to the dark side. There is no chaos, there is harmony. Jedi do not create chaos or destroy, they seek balance in all things. Obi-Wan was able to survive and sometimes even thrive through chaos. When General Grievous was attacking him at a rate of 20 strikes per second, Obi-Wan slipped into what is best described as a flow state and let the Force guide him. Like Mila would say, Obi-Wan was like a leaf, but the wind in this case is the will of the Force. If Obi-Wan was in a fight, he fought as the Force guided him and was not concerned as to whether or not he lived or died. The Jedi were ruled by chaos. Their affiliation with the Republic pulled them in hundreds of directions. They were even infiltrated by a family who reported back to the Sith for generations with no one sniffing them out. As conflicts and the chance of war grew, the Jedi were simply unable to focus on brushfire type conflicts nearly as much as they used to, which greatly contributed to the already growing lawless chaos. The people who were inevitably neglected grew to hate the Jedi, and when these people hate the Jedi, those same people will believe that they are traitors when someone they don't hate, Chancellor Palpatine, tells them as much. There is no death, there is the Force. Jedi believe one becomes one with the Force upon death, so death is no tragedy to them. Jedi can become an apparition, extending their physical appearance through the Force. Eventually, they will completely merge. Well, this is the most simple one. Obi-Wan, with the help of Qui-Gon, was able to become one with the Force and appear as a Force ghost, while most simply died and went to the netherworld of the Force. While this particular instance does not show the bad in the other Jedi, and is another example of him being simply a cut above, I think that Obi-Wan's failure with Anakin sometimes overshadows all the other good he did, and that really sucks. Honestly, Anakin was the only major failure he really had, and that was due to him promising to Qui-Gon that he'd train him. If another Jedi had trained Anakin, then I think he might have dealt with his feelings better, and maybe he wouldn't have fallen. Honestly, I think Obi-Wan learned from Anakin's hot-headedness more than Anakin learned from his teaching. Unfortunately, this failure leads to the fall of the Republic, but to his credit, he spends the rest of his life and even after trying to fix it. I don't mind him lying to Luke, because if he had told him, "Hey, your dad is evil and he along with the troops we trusted with our lives are the reason you don't see too many Jedi anymore, and if you do, you won't see them for very long," Luke probably would have been terrified. The lie of omission he tells is important because he needs Luke to believe that there can be something better, that he comes from a legacy that helps support that better thing. I think that Obi-Wan should have told Luke the truth before he went to go face Vader, but I know there was no way he could have known Vader knew the truth. But I want to hear what you think about Obi-Wan, so drop your opinions down in the comments. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.